Hi, folks. Meteorologist Don Paul here on my YouTube channel, Don Paul Weather Plus. And I want to remind you, please, at the top, if you enjoy this channel and want to keep it going, please remember to hit the subscribe button, that little rectangle beneath the video, because that's what's necessary for this to get going. Now, I'm going to get going with a non sequitur. This is a little tidbit that came up on Twitter this week, and it has nothing to do with the main topic, but I thought you might enjoy one Pennsylvania man's hypothesis on why this year has brought so many tornadoes.
We didn't have tornadoes here until we started putting into traffic circles. Because on the counter, you want to know why? When people go round and round in circles, it causes disturbance in the atmosphere and causes tornadoes.
Well, there you go. You know, I grew up in northern New Jersey, right opposite Manhattan, and in my childhood, northern New Jersey was rife with roundabouts. I mean, they were everywhere. And I don't recall any tornadoes once near Jersey City. There have been some since, but the roundabouts by then were gone. So that's the kibosh on his idea. Now I want to go back to a topic while it is still fresh in our minds, and that is D-Day. We just passed the 75th anniversary of that momentous event in human history. And the weather forecast for the D-Day invasion was the most critical weather forecast in the history of meteorology. There's no disagreement amongst meteorologists on that. And there were so many critical issues, including the tides, which are not directly part of meteorology. Tides are more predictable than the actual weather. But General Eisenhower and his general staff were already asking back when it couldn't be done for forecasts a week in advance. We had a narrow window of opportunity, June 5th, 6th, 7th, where the tides would be more favorable due to the lunar tidal cycle. And if he couldn't get the invasion done within that window, it would have to be postponed until the following month, which would have had a tremendous strategic significance. And there were two groups of meteorologists working with the general staff. One was headed by an American colonel, Irving Crick, who had actually founded the first meteorology department at Cal Poly way back in 1934. And his basic hypothesis was you could forecast weather just by looking back at analog situations in which things were lined up similarly. And analogs are still used today, but generally not to forecast a day-to-day event. We use them to forecast what's going to happen with patterns. And generally, when you can see, for example, during May, a ridge over the southeast and a cold trough of low pressure in the upper atmosphere over the west, it became more predictable that severe weather would become very widespread in the central and southern plains over many days, not just a single forecast for a single day. But Crick and his fellow Americans were insistent, using their methodology, that June 5th would be the good day. And they went to Ike and said, that's the day you got to go. The wave heights will be lower, the weather will be calm. The British team, headed by Captain James Stagg, thought otherwise. And the British meteorologists from the British Met Office were very good in their own right, but they also had the ability to tap into the knowledge of a Norwegian pioneer named Sverre Petersen. He was one of the Norwegians who discovered fronts back in World War I. No one knew frontal boundaries existed until their analysis in World War I. People noticed, hey, it just got colder. It seems like the wind shifted. But boundaries are critical in determining where convection is going to fire up, where precipitation is most likely to be heaviest. And Stagg's team told Ike, no, don't do June 5th. And they based their analysis on good, hard analysis. Now, of course, we had no satellites, we had no weather radar back then, and no computer models. What we did have were weather balloons being launched over North America. The balloon launchings had begun in the 1930s and over Great Britain, but the information gathered over Britain would generally not be of great use since it would already be past the English Channel. And we had a number of weather ships out in the North Atlantic monitoring the weather, monitoring frontal wind shifts, as well as many reconnaissance flights to find these cold fronts and low pressure systems. And the British team said June 6th would be the best day, and for reasons I'm still not entirely clear on, Eisenhower and his general staff went with the British forecast. And as the son of a D-Day veteran, along with, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of other offspring, I'm very grateful they went with the Brits. My dad landed on Omaha Beach as a medic on June 6th with the 29th Infantry Division. And that was a bad enough day. The waves were sufficient that prior to the assault, the troops in the landing craft, it was universal, had terrible seasickness. They watched hours and hours of naval bombardment and Army Air Corps bombings of the German gun emplacements behind Omaha Beach. Unbeknownst to them, though, where they began to think, well, it's not going to be a cakewalk, but they sure must have gotten most of those guns. They didn't get most of those guns. Unfortunately, many of the targets were missed. And so Omaha Beach became Bloody Omaha, 300 yards of exposed beach with iron barricades and barbed wire, and many drownings, even with better weather, where landing craft under that withering fire, there may have been some panicky decisions where the crew chief would open the gate a little too soon and drop troops with just loads of equipment strapped to them into deep water, and there were tanks lost that sank in 20 feet of water. So the forecast was critical, but it was the best forecast. And we can be grateful that with the limited tools these meteorologists had to work with, they were able to get the job done and unquestionably saved hundreds, if not thousands, of the 160,000 Allied troops who landed on that momentous day, which began bringing the war to a close on the Western Front in the long slog ahead. Hope you found that interesting. A much less pressure-filled forecast for this weekend for you. Beautiful both days. Warm, but with comfortable humidity. Upper 70s to near 80 Saturday. High UV index, some high thin clouds Sunday afternoon, but still a pretty high UV index. Will keep the low humidity. Sunday on a downslope southeast wind, though, will be hotter when you're elbow to elbow out there on Delaware Avenue, with temperatures reaching the low to mid 80s. So that's it for now. I'll be back again very soon, and please subscribe.